Congress will depart from a letter of the late leader of the movement, Sławomir Sierakowski, found after his assassination. Let me read his letter. To my friends and comrades, I can feel that I might be gone soon, but I know that you won't run out of strength and imagination to change the world. Ties and imagination are what we need to enable the social change that we promised ourselves when we summoned 3,300,000 Jews to return to Poland. What we want is to create a world in which such a plan would be not simply dismissed as utopian. I had a dream about what should be changed in Poland, but we need more dreams and imagination to change Europe and the Middle East. And I can promise you that these changes will be big and difficult to carry out. That's why I'm asking all of you to think about them together. Argue, debate, and choose those that will best serve our cause. The cause of the Jewish Renaissance movement in Poland, JRMiP. Today, as you have already heard, we will discuss the future of Europe suggested by the delegates sitting around this table. Our day will be divided into 6 sessions. Each delegate will be given 5 minutes to briefly present and explain his or her proposal. At the end of each session, there will be a discussion and voting. Each proposal will be put to a vote. Both the delegates here on stage and the participants seated around this table will be asked to decide in favor or against each individual proposal, raising a red card in support or a white card in objection. We shall then tally the votes to determine the agenda of JRMiP. I wish us all a fruitful day.
I have a very simple demand. I will start with in Hebrew and I will try to translate it. I'm not sure I'm a good translator, but הרצחת וגם ירשת. Have you killed and also taken possession? I will not start with a statistic. I will read my demand. To donate all profit from Holocaust tourism to rehabilitate Gaza, Rwanda, Congo, South Africa, and other third world and not third world countries that were under Western colonialism. I think it's quite practical in how to share. So maybe I didn't understand the mission of the day, and I didn't think about how to contribute to Europe, but how can Europe can contribute maybe to the others. And one of the things living now in Europe, I find tremendously interesting that you're mainly dealing with the past. So to create the future of Europe, if I'm going along the agenda of the day, Europe should share the profit of the tourism, the Holocaust tourism, that increased from the 60s till today. In Poland, there is a complaint already for a long time about the group of Israelis that coming every year, or especially around the spring, to Auschwitz and Birkenau. They're bringing their own kosher food from Israel. They're traveling with flags. Everything is arranged, and they are not mixing with the others, the Poles. Auschwitz, Birkenau. In general, you can enter without paying. You need to remember all those kind of institutes are non-profit. But from, I think, April until November 2012, you can't enter without a group. For a guiding trip, you need to pay 20 zloty, which is 4.7 euro, for a guiding tour in Polish. For other guiding tour, it's 7 euro. It's any other language, if it's Hebrew or English. And the amount of people that enter last year, it's 1,400,000.
I'm thinking about the film industry making films about the Holocaust, Spielberg, I don't know, Hollywood making...
If you think we need to have more film about a second
No,
world...
I think we need to
sorry,
use...
so I'm not here.
I think we need to use the income.
Copyright.
Yeah,
Copyright
for
on
a Holocaust copyright. And then we can have some more money to donate to your project. And this would also have some implication on the Israeli movie industry, because so many movies are done about the conflict. We would have a lot of money to invest in Palestine, in Lebanon, wherever.
I think there is an inequality that, for example, in Poland, there are a lot of former concentration camp sites who are deeply in need of financial aid.
I talk only about the profit. Profit, it means that education, maintenance, and everything is paid, and then you have a profit. It's completely different. It's when you have a budget, so you have to cover the budget, you have everything, and then you have a profit. What do you do with the profit?
I think your statements are problematic for two reasons. The first one is the category of Holocaust industry and Holocaust tourism also has been an anti-Semitic category for tens of years, and it's hardly an original new category. It's a way of channeling anti-Semitic emotions and has been for a long time. The other reason, the normal argument is the Holocaust is a way for Jews to make money. So this is like the anti-Semitic argument.
To me, what was the most important thing about this was that it is a way of actually, it's not shutting down the past and moving forward. It is actually a way of making something productive with memory. I don't think there is an antagonism here towards the past or, remembering. It's that there is a form of remembering that is nostalgic and completely stagnant, and there is a form of memory that moves us somewhere else, and that's why these things are connected. Of course, if there is disasters and refugee camps, etc., elsewhere, why not use the horror of the past to prevent the continuing horror of the future?
There is a sense of victimhood that is being propagated within this kind of tourist in Holocaust tourism.
By whom?
By the fact that there is that tourism industry, and there's a sense of entitlement of, that kind of history of horror is something that you need to propagate without being self-inquisitive or critical of what you are actually doing with the rest of the world colonially to this day. There's no sense of even interrogation of what is happening today in the name of the Jewish people.
Wait, so are you criticizing the...
I'm criticizing Israel, I'm criticizing Europe that is not even standing to condemn Israel and what it's doing today.
There isn't much of a dispute in Israel saying what should be the lesson of Holocaust? Is the lesson of Holocaust is exclusive a Jewish lesson, or if it is a universal lesson? I think what Galit is saying, no, it can be a universal lesson, and this is, I think, that it ought to be recommended and applauded because of that.
Galit, where are you? Repeat, please, your...
Okay, to donate all profit from Holocaust tourism to rehabilitate Gaza, Rwanda, Congo, South Sudan, and other countries that were under Western colonialism.
Please vote. Christian? 49 yes and 11 no.
My demand is there should be no more official languages in EU member countries. That means abolition of official national languages. I think that our view of the world is most deeply shaped by nation states. And by the idea that these nation states have homogeneous populations, and looking at how the biggest ethnic minority in Europe, the Roma people, are treated both in Eastern Europe and Western Europe. We should stop threatening what is called the others with assimilation, integration, becoming like the mainstream, the majority.
The idea of abolishing official languages is not a very good one. I think the example of a so-called free market is our best example of that. The abolishing of certain guidelines doesn't lead to an increased amount of freedom, but frequently to a monopoly of the dominant.
The nations are a product of the printing press. So all the dialects got lost when the printing press homogenized the languages, etc. And so you really have a problem of, do you want to abolish the printing press?
Why only language? Let's abolish the nation. Let's abolish the cultural identity. All institutions based and founded on the very idea of essential cultural identity. Canons of national literature, of art history, we can abolish. Please vote on this demand.
Yeah.
Okay. 50 yes, 20 no. Zoran Terzic.
Since this conference suggests a large-scale exodus of the living, let us come back to the dead. Exchange the dead. In an orgy of memory politics, let's rebury the World War II dead in the according countries or swap cemeteries between former enemies. In case you have no dead bodies or not enough, but mostly ashes, like in Auschwitz, you can gather seeds around Birkenau camp and export them, as has been showcased here at the Biennale. Or even better, grow edible plants and or animals on the Birkenau ground and organize commemoration feasts where these Holocaust dishes are eaten, displaying the cannibal nature of memory politics. Eating the dead, displaying the banality of good and evil. So, what should the EU do in order to accept the other? Whatever the EU, Europe is already the other. So Europe is my demand. Europe shouldn't change. It should swap.
Please, Zoran, again, repeat. It is very short, I know.
I demand to apply or implement large-scale swapping rituals.
Okay, please,
including people and.
51 yes and 4 no. The Eastern enlargement is, I quote, a central pillar in Europe's post-Cold War architecture. The enlargement, the process. So, where should it actually stop? And what is the true cause of the European realpolitik? To keep alive liberal capitalism that cannot survive without some form of non-economic, mostly etatist political intervention. As you know, we call it now bailout, but this is probably what is the agenda of the European Union. So, let's disclose the absurdity of the European realpolitik and include China to finally face the capitalist truth of the whole European project.
I think that once we annihilate difference and include everybody, life becomes pointless, very boring. For example, it's well known that the Nazi project created good pornography, whereas the communist project is very dull in that respect. So I think that we should keep a certain tension and capacity to fantasize, which actually demands othering the other rather than including him.
Why to think of big state that includes other small states and becoming bigger and bigger? How about thinking about the history of modernism as a Western cultural form that has managed to be translated all over the world? How this idea managed to be translated into the Chinese modernism, into the Japanese modernism, into the African modernism, all over the world.
The crisis we are witnessing right now is somehow linked to the market concurrence, the cheap work, the cheap labor forces in China. Europe is in a direct concurrence to China. So if we don't expand this bond of, Europe will not exist.
It sounds like quite a familiar practice for Europe to expand itself. It has a long history of that, and it hasn't led to anything productive in the past. I mean, it has for Europe, but not for any other civilization it encountered. Right now, there is a different model that appears to work differently with differences, and I'm surprised that the comparison doesn't come about, that Europe remains Europe. Where is Australia? Where is, I mean, there are other empires around, and Europe are no longer an empire. It is hard to come to terms with that, but it is no longer. And perhaps maybe it will one day not be, and that might not be a bad thing.
Thank you.
Es geht so. Oi, Brüder, oi, Gott wird uns nicht helfen. Lass mir sich befreien allein. Und lass mir sich zerreißen von die Ketten. Und lass mir allein zusammengehen. Brüder, denn Gott wird uns nicht helfen. So lasst uns doch allein uns befreien. Und lasst uns zerbrechen unsere Ketten und gehen zusammen allein. Achim im ha'elo yatzilenu, nasig et ha'chofesh levad, nikra ha'kvalim me'alenu, ve'yachdav levadenu nitzad. Brothers, if God will not, comrades, if God will not help us, let us be free on our own. We'll break all the chains that bind us and travel together alone. Lass mir sich zerreißen von die Ketten und lass mir allein zusammengehen. Prepare yourself to swallow all your diamonds and your rings and all your ticky, shiny, windy things. Beware yourself, the photos in the newspapers are blurred. The radio is broadcasting a word. Take care of yourself, the neighbors aren't neighbors anymore. They're leaning with a glass against your door. Beware yourself and hoist into the air your disbelief. Just go ahead and give yourself relief. Get ready for your inner immigration. Get ready to be alien inside. Consider all your social modulation. The borders of your foreign order bride. You won't ever have to leave your nation. You won't ever have to even try. Just make a secret inner emigration, and you won't ever have to say goodbye. Well, Hannah was at home in the Berlin cabarets of 32. But in 33, the weather turned, and the brown shirts all turned loose, and the rumors, they were bad. Her Sozi lover, Alex, was getting scared. You see, his name was on a list for having red friends and brown hair, and he wanted to get out. And Hannah could have gone with him to his family in Ukraine, but instead she took a walk out in the rain. Through her Berlin, she thought about how this weather, it would pass. Anyway, she still had a gültigen Pass. So she chose to make an inner emigration. She started to feel alien inside. With all the social marginalization, her sense of place was starting to be tried. But she couldn't stand abandoning her nation. She didn't want it all to pass her by. So people make their inner emigrations, till one by one they have to say goodbye. Россия.
Today, we will discuss the future of Poland as suggested by the delegates sitting around this table. We shall start with Sławomir Sierkowski's proposal.
1. Polish citizenship to all immigrants. 2. Reintegration tax to cover the costs of moving 3.3 million Jews to Poland. 3. Hebrew as the second official language in Poland. 4. Dismissal notice of the Polish state concerning the concordat with the Vatican State. Each religious institution should act on the same level. 5. Minority house instead of Senate in Polish Parliament.
I think we could even extend that by even granting citizenship to people who are of Polish descent who haven't asked for it. So we just mail the passports to people in Israel and in the States, and they get them in the mail, and then this way they don't even have to go to the embassy. And I think this would really serve the agenda of this movement, because I think if they receive this passport, they would say, well, I might as well go and see what they want.
Yeah, I just wanted to know who has to pay the tax. Is it the Polish people, which would be okay for me, or is it to be shared all over the world, or who is doing this?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be bad to tax the Germans, of course, which is what you're implying, of course. I think it wouldn't be bad. I think this would also be the first, it would be a precedent, because it would be the first case of one country taxing the citizens of another country. I think this would be a marvelous international precedent. I think that's, as a kind of an absurd gesture, it would be wonderful.
I wonder why Hebrew should be the second language, since I think most of, or maybe half, I don't know how many of the Jews with Polish ancestry who are not in Poland speak Hebrew. I'd say there are many more who speak other languages, for example, Spanish, Portuguese.
I think that the idea is to revive the Jewry that used to live in Poland back then, and the language was mostly Yiddish and Polish in a way, but in any way not Hebrew.
I would rather suggest as a second language in Poland actually Vietnamese language, because today our minority in Poland is Vietnamese minority, and actually they are inhabiting the former Jewish ghetto part in Warsaw also. So I would see those things also together.
According to the official church statistics, we have 96% of Catholics in Poland, I think, if I'm not wrong, which is a powerful weapon in the hands of the Catholic Church, who says we can't have legal abortion in Poland, for example, because we have 96% of people who, by definition, are against abortion. The regulation that is imposed by the Catholic Church is that you have to go to the church in which you were baptized, together with 2 adult witnesses, and you have to go there twice, because for the first time that you go, the local priest is obliged to preach to you for approximately 1 hour, trying to convince you not to step out of the church. And only after you reconfirm, yes, I do want to please be excommunicated, can you actually finish this process and stop being a member of the Catholic Church. I think this is against human rights, and I think that we as a movement should campaign to allow our members religious freedom, actually, in the sense of an easy way out of the institution with which maybe they do not necessarily identify themselves with.
We have to forbid the so early baptizing. You can be baptized when you are old, with a mature. It's cruel and crazy to baptize someone who is unconscious. I'm for a multicultural country and multi-religion and coexisting all religion together. But for Polish Catholic Church, I would like to give some condition to this church and said that you can exist in our country together with other religions, but in one condition. You should decide for ordination of women for priests. It's first condition. And second, accept the homosexual marriages. And then after this condition, Polish church can exist. And that's my.
Yeah, I think on a very similar issue, I think I, of course, agree with Kinga's statements about limiting and changing the practices of the Catholic Church. The problem is that one of our postulates is that all religions should be equal. We voted on this today. All religions should be treated the same. This would mean that we wouldn't allow circumcision.
Dismissal notice of the Polish state concerning the concordat with the Vatican state. Each religious institution should act on the same level. We have 1 no and 48 yes. So that will become a part of the agenda.
So my proposal is mainly about the problem of inviting also to Poland not only 3 million and half of Jewish men, but also maybe some Jewish women, because all the time when we say Jews, we mean general the men. But if you want to invite someone to Poland, you must really also ask the gender question. How will feel in today Poland, the women which try to live in the Poland? No reasonable woman will like to settle in a country where abortion is forbidden. It's extremely humiliating. But to change all of this, we must change something very basic, I say. We have to change the mentality of Polish men. We should limiting men's involving in all kinds of governments. I think it's a kind of parity quotes, and I think maximum 30% for men. It's more than enough. And in this way, Polish men find how it looks like living in the place where you don't have power, and it's very useful for them.
Is discrimination a good response to discrimination? Is it the only way to achieve the equality? To discriminate those who are discriminating someone before? Is there any other option?
Always someone who discriminates give this kind of comments.
It's a good thing for people who oppress, and oppression can be something, very passive. You just take rights. You just take them for granted. It's a good thing for people who have rights for granted to once not to have them, right? A good thing for people who don't get to stand in checkpoints to have to stand in checkpoints, etc., etc.
We always think maybe of a certain type of Jewish people that we want to invite. And this is just an open question, like, what is our desire, like, whom do we want to have back? Because, Mea Shearim's ways of putting things in life and the violent traditions there, it's actually so much connected to what we have already in Poland. And I'm just posing this question, do we want to invite everybody?
As the American Republicans have found out, the minute they stopped being racist and anti-immigrants, they realized that a lot of immigrants and people from minorities are actually on their side in being homophobes, misogynist, and so on and so forth. So in fact, immigrants, especially from poor countries, tend to be an ally in the repressive mechanisms of the patriarchy. So this is again the question of whom do we want? Because it seems like in the imagery that Yael Bertana used in the first film, where Sławek Sierakowski gives his speech in Warsaw at the stadium, the imagery she uses suggests that the Jews that we want back are the liberal urban Jews. We want Franz Kafka, Bruno Schulz. We want Emma Goldman to come to Poland. That's whom Sławek was inviting and hoping that they would all be like this. When So I think we've come up, I think the question of patriarchy is a very, very important question, and one that really forces us to define the scope or the ideas or the goals of this movement. Because why create a movement that will again create another repressive society?
Yes, we want to invite also Jewish people who are not so liberal, and we want to be for them liberal. We want to avoid the situation when any kind of religion movement will dominate the political situation or cultural situation, and also we don't want patriarchat in our country, and that's all.
In Iceland, after the speculation and the financial crash, actually what was observed in this progressive society is that the banking was too much testosterone-driven, and they are considering now the anti-testosterone implementations or rules for banking sector not to be dominated by men.
My idea, it's not totally changing the world and Poland forever, but it's a temporary temporary solution. Because now we have domination of men and domination of Catholic Church, so we have to stop it, to teach this men and this organization to be in equal or even lower position for some time, to have for them a new experience how to not be in power and but in a lower position. And so my demand is to open Poland for women, Jewish women and other women, also Polish women.
There's one.
Who voted no? Who voted no? Stand up, no.
We have 2 no and 44 yes, so the proposal is accepted into the agenda.
I would like to speak about certain tourism which is going on between Poland and Israel since last 20 years, quite intensively, and I mean Israeli youth delegations to Poland and also Polish religious pilgrimage to Holy Land, to Israel. What I propose is actually through redirection of those tours to question the Polish still existing nationalism, anti-Semitism and hostility, somehow rebrand Poland as Germany did it very well, rebrand itself towards a Jewish perception. So what could be done? I mean, this is just an opening question, and I hope we can discuss it, how these tours and also pilgrimages in Israel could be redirected. First of all, I think what should be included is also that these tours also should go to Germany, both to Poland and Germany. I mean, to the sites of former concentration camps, but not only in Polish territory.
The Israeli tours for young people are organized by the state. They're a function of the state and then and have a concrete function. Their function is to have young people come to Poland, and the very obvious message that they get is, if you don't go and fight for Israel, this will happen to you. This is why these trips exist. Create a kind of subversion, that we create all sorts of opportunities for these participants to go and sneak away from their groups during these trips and create, you know, all sorts of parties, and in just on the tours, on the trails of these trips, these young people coming from Israel to get this message could have all sorts of temptations Polish temptations that would lure them away from this military, and they would associate with, wow, Poland was this incredibly sexy place where there were all these wonderful things, but I had to listen to these terrible things that my military, that the advisors from the military kept on telling me, but I wanted to go and meet boys or meet girls and do all these things. So I think the sexual element here and the element of hormones is incredibly important and is what we can build upon here.
I want Poland to be the country which is, ready to welcome the other, but I'm not quite sure, do I want Poland to be a touristic attraction? I don't find those things equal, so that is my question. Do you really see the link between tourism and welcome the other?
The first visited place out of all cultural institutions is Auschwitz, of course, with 1 million visitors per year, and the second is the castle of Krakow with 500,000, so 50% less, So, and also we can see in Krakow on the daily basis the leaflets stating in one day 99 zlotys, Auschwitz, rafting, and Wieliczka, and a free pickup.
Do you think that we should really make it part of the Jewish Renaissance movement to make those, I don't know, to make Poland a touristic attraction?
It is quite important, I guess, also to create a situation that we also are in the dialogue and not only observed through the windows of the bus.
Okay.
How would you like to redirect those people, those Catholic Poles who go to Israel to see the sites where Jesus lived and died? What is your idea there?
I think first they have to understand that they don't only go to the Holy Land, but also to the modern country.
Tourism is important because it's a tool, just to clarify the comments made, because it's a tool to achieve the goals of this movement.
As a North American Jew, I think that it cannot be underestimated the extent to which these kinds of travel programs influence the Jewish world's perception of Poland, and changing the Jewish world's perception of Poland has to be the first step for any support of a movement like this.
If the goal, okay, it has to serve our goal, but just relocating Jews, it's not a goal in itself. It has broader goals. But if the broader goal is promotion of Polish state, that what I hear here, then I'm sorry, I cannot buy it. Yeah, I'm sorry. So if we are getting rid of one nationalism of Israeli state to create another nationalism, which might be multicultural, multinational, good, it will be even stronger, the country, if it will have not only Poles but Jews. But if it's all about promotion of this state, then I don't know what we are doing here.
As long as we do not abolish the concept of citizenship, we are not doing anything with the nation state. So we can change numbers, we can change the configuration for sure, but it is not true that we are changing the logic of the nation state. Today, universal human rights are guarded and protected by one mechanism only, citizenship. And as long as that mechanism is, and perhaps we don't have an alternative, it's not to suggest that, but that is what nation state is. That is the system that keeps that in place, and that has not been challenged. So in that sense, she is right. There is a suggestion of removal of population from one nation state into another nation state, which will have, a multi-cultural population, and perhaps even will not be called Poland anymore, but something else. It will still be a nation state.
Maybe you can do that once again, Joanna, so it can be clear for us what the proposal is.
To subvert the route of Israeli youth delegations to Poland and Polish pilgrimage tours to Israel with the help of Poles, Jews, and Germans.
Yes. Thank you. We have 7 no and 43 yes. So Jana Warsza's proposal will become a part of the agenda of the Jewish Renaissance movement in Poland.
The state of Poland should devote 15% of its annual budget to culture and the arts. 15% of its annual budget to culture and the arts. This is the central state budget. Let me explain how this should work. The current situation, for those of you who aren't from Poland, is that the state of Poland dedicates less than 1% of its annual budget to culture and the arts, which is, I think, the lowest in the European Union and one of the lowest around the world. It would create a creativity vacuum, meaning that we have more demand for creative people than we have in Poland. This would provoke all the Israelis from Tel Aviv, to go back to our original point, would move to Sopot, which is also by the sea in Poland. And so this is how we would convince them. We'd say, we have a lot of money for the arts, you can come, you can live by the sea in Sopot. So it would really develop Sopot. But also, I mean, they could move to other places as well. You know, everybody could move where they wanted to, of course. The creativity vacuum would draw creative people from everywhere, from around the world. So it's also a form, you could say, of creative warfare, because we would create a brain drain from all the other countries. So this is good for the economy, of course. These creative people, and this is, you know, the key. The creative people, the total culture plan would create an ideas bank. So we would have more ideas than any society has ever had. We would have so many ideas, we would be able to solve all problems. Yes? Because just imagine, we're talking about millions and millions of whatever currency you can imagine. Everybody will be able to think and think of concepts and solve whatever problems we think about. We'll be able to solve problems that we haven't even thought about today.
First, I thought it's really a great idea, but then I envisioned it, and then I thought, like, you want us to become this movement, just another Green Party, and now you suggest that Poland just becomes another Berlin Mitte. That is really a horrible thought. I don't want to live in a place where there are more artists and creative people around than already are here.
Would also redress historical wrongs, in the sense that the situation of Poland, which is also very different from Mitte, is that the situation of Poland is, as Czesław Miłosz has written, that Poland doesn't have material works of art, not because they weren't never created, but because they were destroyed. And this was done by the very concrete historical force, Nazi Germany. This is the loss of culture is unimaginable.
Not all the countries which are represented by us today here need that. Poland needs that. Maybe Sweden and Germany doesn't need that because they already have it. But somehow we have to take into consideration that, for example, for some countries, this is a reality, or this would be a radical change. That would be a visionary thing. So I would suggest that first, let's have the Mitte also in Poland, and then, you know, let's deal with it. For example, I come from Greece. If that would happen in Greece right now, I don't know. I mean, you can imagine, that would be a revolution.
I thought it was a kind of subversive affirmation of the creativity rhetorics that we usually hear from neoliberal politicians. But the more I listen to you, the more it seems like you're really just affirming and not being subversive at all. I heard you say several very symptomatic things. One of them was, for an example, it's not about art, it's about creativity. That's the first one. The second one is, we were spending a lot of time explaining to politicians about how good art would be for the economy, and so on. The problem is, just to say it very, very simply, you can't increase arts funding without radically looking at all the other funding that's going on. You can't go in this direction and think that arts funding will solve something from the top down, that culture will do something. I really want to say that I really strongly disagree with you in the way you framed your argument, the way you've laid it out. So I'm going to vote against you, and I would ask everyone else to vote against you too. The thing is not for us to get more funding, but to bring more meaning to the things we do.
What I emphasize, of course, this huge amount of money would go to all sorts of artistic projects. But what I'm emphasizing, and I think I've made this point very clear, I'm emphasizing vast amounts of culturally underprivileged people all around Poland who have no access to culture. This is what I'm emphasizing. So I'm really not saying that organizations such as the Berlin Biennale should get more money. I'm really saying that somebody who lives in a very underprivileged area of Poland should have the access to learning to play an instrument, which then does increase also their chances in the world. It does, and I don't think that's such a bad thing, that it increases their chances of in the world. I want to just say there was a very important precedent to this, which is the WPA's art program in the 1930s as part of the New Deal. in which tons and tons of money during the Great Depression in America went to the creation of artworks. And this program supported such artists as Tennessee Williams and Jackson Pollock, and I could list 100 more, and did create actually great works of art. So that was a response to a point made before, and enabled, in fact, American culture as we know it, which became so dominant in the 50s, 60s, 70s, to exist.
Something is a bit of a concern for me here in the sense of what is it that we are believing in, right? What is this building narrative that is going to, liberate us? Because still, again, what I hear behind is, forces of the unadvantaged, the barbaric, etc., that will be uplifted. And so I'm not suggesting that you are saying that, but I need a clarification, otherwise I cannot vote for that.
Great, thank you. So now is the opportunity for you, Michał, to summarize in your...
The state of Poland should devote 15% of its annual budget to culture and the arts.
Okay, and we will, concurrent with our new voting methods, we will vote now on Michał's proposal. $25 no and 33 yes. So this proposal will be accepted into the agenda.
The first step for any mass return of Jews to Poland is to remap Polish Jewish memory. It is the physical, material environment of the nation, monuments, memorials, tourist routes, that scaffolds our sense of national identity. We want to change this ecosystem of memory with a comprehensive program we call Birthright Poland. Birthright Israel is the program that offers a free trip to Israel for every diaspora Jew. Birthright Poland adapts this principle for the needs of the Polish Renaissance movement in Poland.
Birthright Poland is a Polish government-funded youth travel program. It brings Jewish youth to Poland to explore the country's long and diverse history with their Polish, German, Roma, Ukrainian, Belarusian, and other European counterparts. Instead of Jewish youth visiting Poland's landscape of Nazi camps, the international group will go camping. Campgrounds will be located in Polish forests. The forest is a space of possibility. Not yet mapped in the service of any one group's memory, it is a space ripe for reimagining.
Birthright Poland campers will reinvent long-standing camping traditions. These young pioneers will build settlements by learning ancestral construction techniques. Each group will build on the work of the former, preparing a welcoming landscape for the first wave of Renaissance movement returnees.
New sites will announce the deeds, creations, and achievements of ethnically diverse Polish women and men from a variety of historical moments.
Many maps of Jewish heritage in Poland look like this, where Polish Jewish heritage is reduced to Nazi death camps and ghettos. We have drafted a second map to feature an evolving landscape of diversity and cultural sharing, inspiring new generations of Poles and Jews to reimagine their roots, but also to embrace their futures. As an old Jewish legend has it, it was in the forest that the first Jewish travelers to Poland discovered their God-given home. According to the legend, entering the woods, they saw a passage from the Talmud engraved on every tree. And they knew they had come to the land where their ancestors dwelt. And they called the place Pauline, which in Hebrew means, "Here you shall find a haven." If Jewish life in Poland started in a forest, maybe it can restart in the forest as well.
Israeli people who they just love the idea of forests and exchanging deserts for forests. So it'll be very tempting for them. You have big pictures of like very old trees. They'll be attracted immediately. Yeah.
So the forest is not only a counter metaphor to the image that many people, many Jews worldwide have of Poland being a gray country. They imagine Poland in black and white with gray skies.
Jews tend to be attracted to urban spaces, coffee, cakes. I don't know. I really am questioning the forest as a site of Jewish rejuvenation. The settler idea, yes, but if you notice, most of the settlers in Palestine, look at it's pretty spare. They like condos that look very more like Hitler's bunker than like a forest. So just thought, I'm not against the forest, I just think that the bond will need to be pursued a lot more aggressively. It's not a natural one. Jews will not go for forests.
And our proposal from Magdalena Wadegórska and Erika Lehrer, I ask you now to vote. Birthright Poland. $10 no and 40 yes. So Birthright Poland will become part of the agenda.
This is as exciting as this evening is going to get, and you're not using it. Or else you wait till this ends and you continue discussing again. Maybe then you will dance, I don't know. But maybe you try. Like, the world is really hard, life is shit, being Jewish is hell, but we have developed the fine art of pretending to be happy. And if you are planning on having all those Jews around, you might as well just practice the art of artificial joy. Yeah, it's a feel-good song about a lucky Jew that has a lot of children and no way to feed them, and if you don't dance to it, you don't have the heart. You do talk the money and Holocaust talk, but you start to scare me about being really Jewish, except for the money part. So stand up, Daniel will lead, try to get some joy out of it.
Oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Wie ich geh, wie ich steh, Herr ist nur in ein Geschrei. Oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Ay, oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Wie ich geh, wie ich steh, Herr ist nur in ein Geschrei. Oy bin ich a mazel dicker jid. Oy hab ich Kinder, kleine Fee, Kinder heulen nacken. Hab ich hoi bis mehr wie Haar, kein Cent im Pocket. Keine singen Kinderlieder.
Today, which is the third session, we will discuss the future of Israel and its relationship to the Middle East.
I would like to ask that we acknowledge the right of return to both Jewish and non-Jewish people. There needs to be addressed a historical violence that was perpetrated on a native people in Palestine through the insertion of a colonialist entity and a building of a nation on and suppressing the rights of one people in favor of the other, with a large supremacist understanding that white, predominantly white, let's say European model of a colonial building of a nation started in a place that they are more deserving of it. And yes, it is colonial, and I evoke colonial in a very precise way, because it was based on the idea that I materially deserve to take your house and your land through war and through the perpetuation of violence, and I deserve to kick you out. And I'm there, and then I can also build a myth to say that I took a land with no people, forgetting the exodus of hundreds of thousands of people. So before we acknowledge the right that the state of Israel, or whatever the history of that place was founded on a violent undertaking, we will never be able to absolve what that history has, what the demarcations of that occurrence actually made for the entire region. And what did it make for the entire region? When you think of hundreds of thousands of people leaving their houses, their material goods, please look at it as material goods. We're talking about Haifa, Jaffa, beautiful cities, with intelligentsia, with intellectuals. This is not the loss of 400 villages. I don't care about the villages. Sorry. We lost our cities. So basically, what we are trying to reclaim here is the historical right by saying the right of return. Yes, people in Israel, people who have perpetuated this history, the legacy of their children will understand what they have done. Like we understand how the Jewish people, when they returned to Poland, what was perpetuated against them.
Our proposal is called De-Ashkenazing Zionism, Fulfilling Right of Return to Europe for a Sustainable Jewish Future in the Middle East. It's a well-known fact that Israel's very foundation was premised on the denial of the Orient, both in terms of delegitimizing the rights of Palestinian people and depriving Oriental Jews of rights and resources and keeping them away from positions of power. Israel's rejection of the Middle East is thus both a domestic and regional affair. For by imagining Israel as a European territory, it blocks itself from the region and prevents Mizrahi Jews from ever becoming worthy national subjects. Now, the Israeli left, which is predominantly Ashkenazi, is normally seen as the prime agent for peace and assimilation. But in fact, the left, which is building on this European imagination and aesthetics in every aspect of its struggle. It was the left that initiated the logic of segregation, with the separation wall being its most recent and brutal manifestation. Its discourse is humanistic and secular and deems every opposing discourse as a reincarnation of old European discourses. And now we can see fascism, Nazism, and McCarthyism are frequent points of reference. It collaborates with and gets funded by the European nation, and it still holds a key position with the academy, media, the cultural elite, in all of which Mizrahi representation is ridiculously low.
Sami Shalom Shitrit, who is a Mizrahi activist and a politician and thinker, saying that he's very much appreciative of this beautiful work that the lefty NGOs are doing, but I'm quoting, but it's not enough, and it's not the essence, and it will never be the essence. There is no way to go around it. We have to say it in the clearest possible way. Only when the European Ashkenazi Jews will start to pack their bags and leave the country, I will start to appreciate their actions against their ancestors' colonialism. I think that's the highest level of awareness imaginable. If you want to shorten the reign of Zionistic Ashkenazi colonialism, collect your children and collect your enlightening books and go to Europe or America. Only when some Ashkenazi left-wing organization will encourage and finance the departure of Israelis, then I will know that something is really happening in the Israeli left. I'm talking about encouraging all the Israelis to get up and move. But like we know, the Mizrahi Oriental Jews are not aware enough to their contribution to white colonialism, and they don't have the European passports. And therefore, they will probably won't go anywhere and will be forced to look the Arabs in the eye and find a better way of living in this country.
It is very nice, and to talk about Jewish Renaissance in Poland and Germany when there are almost no Jews. And I think we have to take this into account and be serious about that. So it's a beautiful suggestion, but so this is connected to the other issue. So I'm not for expelling Ashkenazi Jews from Israel to Europe. I want them with me and the Middle East and Israel. And now, as to the issue of the law of return. And there is the right to law of return. There is a large animosity. Now, of course, maybe I am a bit confined here. I'm talking because I'm a member of the Geneva Initiative, and whereby we have articulated with our Palestinian partners a sort of a formula of addressing this issue without sort of answering, I guess, Reem's, how to put it, maximalist demand that it would be open. And I think that today it is an unstarted position. You talk about the right of return, and it is like you antagonize all the Jewish population of Israel. And it would not be a starter for any peace negotiation between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. So therefore, I think, in this respect, I would vote no, because I think we are not being practical here, and that, if anything, we're going to block any possibility of talking, sincerely, with the very majority of Jewish Israel. So I don't think it's a good starter.
Fuck the Geneva Convention. It's not going anywhere, as you can tell. And by the way, that's why it screws us over and over again. And that's why the Oslo peace process will go nowhere. And that's why all of this will go nowhere, because the Oslo peace process happens with no acknowledgement of right of return, which means no acknowledgement for the historical violence perpetuated by Israel and by its people and its supremacist kind of thinking. Therefore, the amount of settlement building in the West Bank increases in a matter of only 2 years, exponentially more ever during the Oslo peace process because of that. Because there's still this feeling, I'm entitled to take your fucking land. So no, I'm sorry. Address the core issue first. Right of return for the Palestinians, what it means historically. What happened? What have you done and what you should stop doing? Because it happens today. I mean, today you find, I'm positive, I can bet my life on it, that today there was an incident, I didn't see the newspaper, but there should be an incident where a settler decides to take a plot of land in the West Bank. Sorry, so my historical reminder is because it happened today in the future, today in the present and in the future. And this attitude of Israel, it should fucking stop.
I know a bit about politics and I know how it works. Politicians, when they sit together, they don't agree on the right of anything unless they know what the other are going to give them in advance. It just doesn't work like that, That because there is a situation whereby there is a zero-sum game, each other know each other's throat, and they say, well, if now I recognize this right, nothing guarantees me that the ramification and implication will be such and such. So usually when politicians sit there, they said, okay, I would consider it, knowing that that would be the ramifications, implications of that would be sort of limited and narrowed and this and that way. Most of the Palestinians who would enjoy the right of return would go to the West Bank and not to Tel Aviv and Haifa. So there are a lot of arrangements, I think this is how it works in reality. So just to come and to demand of Israel to do that, it would be sort of the usual Israeli politicians say, fuck no. Using your verb.
Reem, do you want to come quickly back on that?
One thing, I'm doing an Obama move here. Really, I mean, only 2 days ago or 3 days ago, he came out and he says, I'm for gay marriage and gay union rights. He knows that he's not, this is a state law. This is according to state law. But what he knows that he did is he's saying, I'm with the right. And the right changes mindsets of people that will make laws and acknowledge things that will make a difference in their society. And he stood in the right position of history. I'm doing a politician's move by saying the right.
He already checked very well the implication, the ballot of his statement.
Me too.
No.
Okay.
And also, I think I have to say something, Yossi, which is that politics is the art of the possible until the impossible becomes possible. So if you never can think that the impossible will ever become possible, you can never think. And we're here to think, not to be pragmatic, because pragmatism has got us nowhere in the last 20 years. Sorry, but I think it's important.
Will the movement take into account that by realizing its goals, it will question the existence of the State of Israel? I mean, what will happen to Israel if 3.3 million Jews will leave the country. What kind of Israel will be then possible? Will Israel disappear or not? But my question to the movement is only if the movement regarding the principles of Sławomir Sirakowski, who was assassinated, one should not forget that, would take into account the disappearance of Israel.
At the moment, Israel is existing as this weird German colony in the Middle East. And what we want to try to do is to imagine what would have happened if the base would have been shaken to the ground.
But
and
the
what
problem
would
is not the European in Israel. I'm very happy to live with Europeans, Israelis. I think that...
But they're not so happy to live with you, this is the thing.
I'm not sure, but this is not the problem. The problem is the regime. The problem is the masculine regime, the military, the status quo, the Yair Lapid regime.
But where did it come from? Where did Yair Lapid come from? Where does it come from?
That regime that produced another Yair Lapid that with his Israeli patriotism and this disgusting nationalism.
Yeah, which came from Zionism, right?
We are the right people, the normal people, the legitimate people.
I see the idea that Sami, who's a dear friend of mine, and I absolutely detest that essay that he wrote, that suggestion is a suggestion of transport, that is a suggestion of transfer, that is a suggestion of somebody to recommend, not to himself, but to a different kind of population, to leave.
This relation that these European people or these white Jews had to Europe is being taught to us. I mean, we see it every day. We see it in the basic structures culturally of the state of Israel. We know that these people fantasize about Europe. But I would like to think that if we had less of these people in Israel, or if they had less power.
Let's get concrete information here, okay? I am a third generation Polish Israeli. Do I have the fantasy? Am I part of that? Should I pack up? Because just explain what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that was, I understand you are talking about blood.
As far as I understand, it's not as if you're going to impose transfer, it's going to be a voluntary transfer. And if that's so, right of return to everybody, everywhere, and it seems like a perfect solution.
Then it would also include the right of return of the Germans to Gdańsk. It would also include the right of return of the Poles to Lvov. No, but where does it stop then?
For me, it's really, to start with, it starts within the territory of Palestine. Looking at the history in relation to Palestine.
Rom and Ariel, can I ask you to formulate your question?
Should we try to, as a political movement, try to pressure the European nations to encourage their Jews to come back?
Okay. Should we try to pressure the European nations to encourage their Jews to come back? Whatever you think of that question, please vote now. Should we try and encourage the European nations to pressure their states, to pressure the Jews to come back because they came from there in the first place? And the results of that, very close again. Yes, 22, no, 30. So that motion is rejected. Sorry about that. But well done. I thought you argued it very well.
Will you acknowledge the right of return for both the Jewish and non-Jewish people? That's it.
Will you acknowledge the right of return for both Jewish and non-Jewish people?
She didn't say that.
Will you acknowledge the right of return for both Jewish and non-Jewish people? Will you acknowledge the right of return? We have to get the statistics. Will you acknowledge the right of return for both Jewish and non-Jewish people? Full stop. Or question mark, sorry. Yeah. Will you acknowledge, please stick your hand up. Again, you're welcome to abstain. I want to defend that right, but you won't be counted. And the answer to that, as I think you all saw, was 50 yes and 5 no. So that's resoundingly passed. Turn to Silly Kugelman and ask her to make her demand, formulate it as a question, and then expand, please.
Israel alone cannot do anything to become a part of the Middle East. Every state in this region will have to change in order to reach a mutual understanding of a new Middle East. All states in the Middle East have to understand and agree that ethnic homogeneity as a precondition of belonging and participation as citizens in a state is a path to injustice, violence, and war. Israel will therefore have to publicly acknowledge expulsions and displacements of local inhabitants and the destructions of their cities and villages in the course of the wars of 1948 and 1967. Palestine has to declare explicitly that it acknowledges the State of Israel. By doing so, it has the legal addressee to demand reparations for the loss of villages, cities, and properties. Palestine will have to accept that there will be no possibility to return to their ancestral homes and places, and instead will have to apply for compensation. Israel will have to abolish the law of return. If the Palestinians will not be able to return to their places of birth, the Jewish part of Israeli society has to give up on the idea of ensuring every Jew an immediate and unconditional citizenship. Israel shall have regulations of how to become a citizen that should apply for everybody who is interested, and like many other countries, Israel can legally define laws for refugees. Each state in the region must define itself as a state of its citizens, regardless of their origin, religion, culture, without privileging any group of inhabitants. And my claim is, every party involved in the conflict, Israel and Palestine, should put aside all historical or presumed historical rights on the territory of Palestine and Israel to be able to reshuffle conditions for mutual state.
I detect in in what you had to say, a certain plea for forgetfulness, something along Nietzsche's line of the abuse of history and the burden, the unbearable burden of historical thinking. Can you say a bit more about this, about how historical narratives actually stand in the way of conflict resolution?
Acting on the grounds of historical arguments in Israel perpetuates the conflict. The settlers are settling with the argument that they have a right to settle. There's a general emotional state of mind in Israel that constantly relates to the Holocaust and argues with that victimization process in order to legitimize politics in actual Israel. I think on the Palestinian side, there's also a constant reference to Nakba and to other losses, and each of them are justified. And I don't want to judge who takes advantage of that argumentation and who really feels it. But if you make politics in such a situation, and I don't mean, let's say, an idea for Jews to resettle in Poland. That's a fantasy that is beyond the scope I'm talking about. But if you really want to argue with history, then you will never end this conflict at all.
Yigal's question was, are you pleading for forgetting? A plea for forgetting?
No, absolutely not. That is no. If life would be that simple, I wouldn't be sitting here. Life is much more complicated, and of course,
then without forgetting, how
remembrance
can
is a
we do
very
it?
important issue, but not for politics. One should really train your mind, on the one hand, to remember what happened and to have your commemoration days and the symbols of history, and on the other hand, clear your head and make politics without historical arguments.
The premise that I have a problem with, Silly, just to kind of really address this, it's not a conflict. It's an occupation. One is more powerful than the other. The historical injustices are today present. The lineage is continuous. I cannot see a severance of where do you start with it. The Nakba is not the Nakba just as an open forum of, I don't know what, mythology or the key that we see there. Sorry, it's not a key, it's not a symbol, it's not a devoid symbol, it's an actuality that happens today, perpetuation of violence that continues every single day. It's the militarization of an entire society, the Israelis. Everybody, mandatory military service. Everybody is in jeeps. It's an exoticization of violence for that society.
You're very true, but these acts are legitimated with history. And in a moment you strip this argument, you're confronted with a blunt fact of occupation and violence in occupation without having to go back to history and trying to put it in a different mode.
I want to decolonize the mind of every Israeli if I can. To tell them, before I say end the occupation, think 1,000 times why you did this, so that you never do it again.
I would like to ask Silly to restate her demand and formulate it as a question.
I'm asking to join me in asking Israel to strip the Jewish character of its state definition.
Should the state of Israel strip itself of its Jewish character? This is a change from the original proposal. That's what we acknowledge, because we imagine the original proposal would have been defeated. I think that's what we're saying. So therefore, the new proposal is, should the Jewish character of the state of Israel be maintained? Yes or no? Sorry, no. Should it be abolished? Should the Jewish character of the state of Israel? I've been very confusing. Let me be clear. Yes, if you want the state of Israel to no longer be a Jewish state. No, if you want the state of Israel to still be a Jewish state. Yes for non-Jewish, no for Jewish.
One step at a time, one step at a time.
And the result of that was 50 yes to 4 no, so that is also carried. So the Jewish Renaissance movement in Poland requests that the state of Israel is no longer Jewish.
Unless you're willing to be an active participant, an activist in Israel, willing to jeopardize your health and maybe sacrifice your life for the sake of actively standing in Israel and refusing and fighting the occupation, unless you're willing to take that responsibility on yourself, get the fuck out of there now. Let's all oppose it from afar, hold our breaths, say we don't like and disagree with all these stupid ideas that will come to fruition, wait 200 years, and then talk again.
I'm still struggling with the actual proposal. Is the proposal that everybody who does not... Yeah. But fight or leave is not a yes-no.
No, leave. If you oppose the occupation, leave Israel and wait 200 years.
I can't just go and leave. I have a family. I have cousins. I have my mother. I have my father. So it is not as if now you tell me, look, either you go sacrifice yourself for the right cause, or leave.
Look, I come from 2 immigrant parents. They came to Israel 30 years ago. They're well-founded, well-established. They have a circle of family in Israel. And they had no problem. They actually pushed me and encouraged me to leave Israel because it's just not looking good. We're outnumbered ridiculously. That's what I see. I understand what you are saying. So I guess what I would do is direct my demand to the youth. Do it. I did it. I had the possibility of doing it. And again, I say, if you want to fight, and I would say actively object, because fight would automatically imply an organized military fight. I don't know exactly where we're going. For instance, when we talk about the protest in Israel, I'm not sure if it's worth anything unless it becomes violent, to be honest. I don't believe that a majority that refuses to accept the fact that the occupation is at the heart of the imbalance, can really resolve anything.
I'm not living in Israel. I have my decision. Why? Maybe it's very close to what you are thinking. I will never offer to others to take the same decision. You have families, you have people that can't finish the months, as literal translation from Hebrew, and don't have the possibility to decide if they want to live in Israel or to live outside of Israel. They don't have a possibility even to decide if they want to live in the city that they are living, the neighborhood. So it's so arrogant.
To me, that is a shocking, irresponsible reaction, what I'm hearing here. There is a bloody history of 60 years of establishing a state. And now people say, it didn't work out, we are leaving.
I've been an activist for 10 years, sometimes more activist, sometimes less, always working. I cannot live in this country anymore. Like, economically and mentally, I just cannot. So would you like to change places?
No.
I would go, I think, sometimes I call it like Berlin, sanatorium Berlin, like people come here to heal after years of like activism.
Yeah, you're right, it is a sanatorium. I'm not rejecting the fact that people leave Israel and come to Berlin to live in a sanatorium. What I don't understand why you have to make a theory out of that.
I didn't go to the army. I was considered arrogant. I left Israel. I was considered arrogant. I want to do something other than discuss politics and fight over politics. When I was living in Israel, I was considered arrogant. Look, I am much less experienced than many people sitting here, but I feel that I am representing a certain kind of group who are saying, we want things to change, we don't want to take part in this, but we pretty much lost all hope.
I can help you to reform your demand. If I understood you, and I think somehow I am, you can put it in a different way and say that it will, for the better of the Israeli citizens and Palestinians, the goodwill of the left wing in Israel will stop, and to let the machine to collapse. I think this is it was your decision to leave the state. It's not to be active from inside because there is no reason to continue and help to something which is already in collapse and you're all the time reshaping it. This will be my idea to you, to rephrase your demand.
The global community includes an estimate of over 12 million stateless people. Without the protection of citizenship, these people have no access to so-called universal human rights. The solution to this grave problem, as it has been clear in Arendt's writing already in 1951, cannot simply be the establishment of a new or another more nation state that will target a particular stateless population. The case of Israel is a clear example of the shortcoming of this solution, and I quote from Arendt. After the war, it turned out that the Jewish question was indeed solved, namely by means of colonized and conquered territory, but this solved neither the problem of the minorities nor the stateless. On the contrary, the solution of the Jewish question merely produced new refugees and new stateless people. The existence of refugees from Europe, Palestine, Afghanistan, Rwanda, Bosnia, Congo, and elsewhere highlights the contradiction at the very heart of the modern liberal democratic nation state, which has the right to deny citizenship to any given individual or category of people, and this despite the confessed and supposedly international national commitment to universal individual rights. The loss of citizenship thus amounts to the loss of the human status. I call for the establishment of the refugee state, Medinat HaPlitim, the state of the stateless, in the current space of Israel, Palestine, and the geographic area that includes Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. The new state will become the legally recognized home of all those who currently live in the designated area as long as they do not hold another citizenship. It will also welcome and grant citizenship to all stateless people who do not possess valid citizenship otherwise. The new state for the stateless will not be marked as Jewish, nor for that matter will it be marked as Palestinian. Its sole mission would be to address and overcome the scandal of the modern refugee. The new state for the stateless will not value any ethnic, national, racial, or other origin or narrative of nativity or belonging. The sole and only criteria for granting citizenship will be based on the fact that individuals or groups are deprived of citizenship. The state of the stateless will make sure that every person and every individual has the right to have rights, today and in the future. The state for the stateless will not only stun Europe, it will stun the entire world, as it will give a new meaning to the otherwise completely empty category of what we call today universal human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
By creating the state for the stateless people, you actually allowing many affluent countries getting rid of the responsibility, because what people do, either refugees or migrant workers, they go to places where they can enjoy better economic opportunities than in their homeland. So if we would have only one, state of the stateless people, that might be a problem. That, for instance, Germany, maybe, I don't know, France, they say, wow, that's a wonderful idea, let's send them all over there.
A state cannot just choose to take citizenship away. So it's not like Germany can tomorrow wake up in the morning and say, hey, let's take this group of people and pull their citizenship away. If that were to happen on a systematic level, of course, we would be in a different situation. The model that I'm taking through from Arendt is the idea that the nation state enabled the creation of a sphere of people who have no rights before the law, so they have not the basic right to have rights, and that in fact the nation states allow that systematically, right? So you can, that's not, what happens in the world today is not that people can strip off citizenship and move into a different place. I'm talking about people who, like Palestinians, have no citizenship. You don't take people again, from West affluent countries, as you said, and strip them off their citizenship.
Statehood is a relatively new thing, and it creates a refugee problem. Now, what would prevent this new state from reproducing that problem, and why not to go the other way around and join Yeshua's International, just abolishing states altogether?
It's not a, I don't oppose other propositions on a principle, but like Arendt, I think they're not realistic. I think that the 20th century is a century of nations, and that outside of the nation state so far, we have not found any institute. The UN doesn't work, international law doesn't work. There is no other entity that protects what we continue to use this term, human rights. That means nothing. There is citizen rights. There are no human rights in the world. So I think that the dissolution of the idea of the human rights, we need to face it as what it is. All there is citizen rights. So those who don't have it should have it.
The right to have rights is, of course, something that is given through nation state citizenry. But my problem with your proposal, and I don't know if I will vote for your proposal because of this, is that it still, like humanitarian discourse, focuses on, in a way, the conditions of the individual that maybe will be granted this citizenry, these rights, through this citizenship, while, as Rim was saying, there is a whole other sphere that is not given to you, that you create, that you make.
I am saying among us, right now, these are the numbers, live 12 million non-humans, okay? We refer to them as humans, but they're not humans. So I'm saying let's make them human. That's my answer about citizenship in action. Then if, you know, a political action depends on being recognized as human. So it's, yes, it's a cycle. You have to give them citizenship for them to have a civil action. And then when they have civil action, they're active civilians. But nobody can have civil action before they're protected by the law. If somebody has civil, you can't, you know, do civil disobedience when you're not a civil. You're not part of the polis.
The segment you quoted from Hannah Arendt is taken from a chapter that is called The Decline of the Nation State. So from what I understand from Hannah Arendt's look at the nation state is that the nation state by definition creates the predicament of the stateless. But in a way, it's also a bug of the system that nears the end of the natural sense. So I wanted to ask you, don't you think that by creating a state for all the stateless, you're enduring the nation state as a leading eternal political model?
What is the advantage of creating a state for the stateless instead of creating a citizenship for all its citizens? And to abolish the Jewish character of Israel and to open it up as a state for its citizens and grant everybody who's living inside the borders the same citizenship?
I actually do have a bit of questioning myself of the proposition, which is very real and a real concern, and I want to sort of bring everybody, because this is, as Charles reminds us, these votes are very important, and I myself don't want to vote on something that eventually I will, you know, regret. This proposition is, you know, universal and humanistic, and of course, you know, saves the category of human rights, or at least gives it some kind of a meaning. But is it possible to adopt this model proposed here by Gil, and at the same time, really fulfill, Rim, your requirement, which is historical justice, not just as an empty sort of gesture, but really as a condition for the possibility of a new and healthy society, right? So it will be, let me just to make sure that my point is clear, let's say that we go back to South Africa and somebody would say, you know what, let's abolish apartheid at the time, but instead of just keeping it, you know, the people who live there and figuring it out, opening it to others and recreating a society. As much as I clearly am supportive of it, I'm actually also very worried that the actual process of healing and mutual, that demands a very long process of decolonialization, which takes, you know, and people sitting in this room and members of the German society know very well that it takes a long time. It is not a simple process. That it might be actually jumping ahead and skipping that. So this is my concern about the proposal.
Will you support the establishment of the state of the stateless on the land, on the Holy Land? Coming in. They're coming in, thank you. So the results of that vote are yes, 30, no, 27. So it's just been passed. We did it! One of the closest.
I will maybe start with saying that I come from Poland. And the idea that lies at the base of this project of Jewish Renaissance movement in Poland is the idea of extending an invitation towards Jewish people, non-Jewish people, whom we, the Polish society, would like to welcome in Poland, would like to have in Poland. We would like to rethink, reinvent, examine Jewish, non-Jewish relations in Poland in a historical context. And now, does this invitation have to be aimed at introducing what I see as radical changes in the state of Israel? We're talking here about exchanging the state of Israel with something else. We are talking here about ripping part of Israel to have it float in the sea. We're talking here about radical demographic decisions in the state of Israel. And my question is, does this movement has to solve the problem of the Middle East? Because this is a question, looking from my perspective, we would like to solve our problem.
Since you don't have an experience of many Jews around you in Poland, I think this is a very good day that you can rethink about your invitation.
Please, can you stand up, please?
Yes, I just wanted to say also just this general comment that I think that for me, one of the great things about this movement is that it started in a very specific call and it has retained its specificity in its name, Jewish, Poland, but that it is finding its identity in process.
Absolutely. I'd also remind us of, I mean, we have a foundational document, yes, which is Sierakowski's words, and very short quote. I had a dream about what should be changed in Poland. This is Sierakowski's words. I had a dream about what should be changed in Poland, but we need more dreams and imagination to change Europe and the Middle East. So it's clear that in the foundational document of the movement, this issue is not only a Polish issue.
What did you get? And now, like in a magic Walt Disney show, they will work together. So Yael, there's your ringtone right there. Yeah, let's do another. Let's twist another old song and give it a different context. You want to tell something about the song?
Oy hob ich mir in Herz a cholem Du mai, du mai, du mai Heb ich auf a von Scholem Du mai, du mai, du mai Aber in mein Cholem steht a Moje Du mai, du mai, du Voll mit Pein und Tage voll mit Treuer. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Auf der Mauer steht a Sellner. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Hinter ihm die grüne Felder. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Hat gebeut zu viele Grenzen. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Auf dem Land und in die Menschen. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Wir wollen die Grenzen überkommen. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Nur wenn Sinne werden weggenommen. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Keiner wird uns Freiheit geben. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Man darf sie nur allein sich steppen. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Aber wenn uns soll das Land gehören. Du mai, du mai, du mai. Zu Volk von Levonne, zu Volk von Sternen. Du mein, du mein, du mein. Seine Fremde ist mein Stand. Du mein, du mein, du mein. Es ist alles da in unser Land. Du mein, du mein, du mein. I carry in my heart a dream, a flag of peace and a land redeemed. But in my dream is a wall of wire, stone and iron forged in fire. On the wall a soldier stands, keeps the people from their land, and borders tear us all apart on the ground and in the heart. And while we all must learn to conquer hate, what's a nation without a state? The land is holy, but for whom? The God of the star and the crescent moon. Well, no one freely gives up power. We alone can take what's ours. Without freedom, without land, here in exile we do stand. Justice without peace, do my, do my, do my. Just a dream, become a beast, do my, do my, do my. Nicht kein Tzedek, nicht kein Sholem, do my, do my, do my. Nor ad Cholem, geworn ad Kolem, do my, do my, do my. Wasser Volk, ohne Medina, do my, do my, do my. Sei Israel, sei Palästina, du mein, du mein, du mein. Yes, so where will exile draw the line? Du mein, du mein, du mein. In Israel or in Palestine. Do my, do my, do my.
We want to return, not to Uganda, not to Argentina or Madagascar, not even to Palestine. It is Poland that we long for, the land of our fathers and forefathers. In real life and in our dreams, we continue to have Poland on our minds. We want to see the squares in Warsaw, Lodz and Krakow filled with new settlements. Next to the cemeteries, we will build schools and clinics. We will plant trees and build new roads and bridges. We wish to heal our mutual trauma once and for all. We believe that we are fated to live here, to raise families here, die and bury the remains of our dead here. We are revivifying the early Zionist phantasmagoria. We reach back to the past, to the imagined world of migration, political and geographical displacement, to the disintegration of reality as we knew it, in order to shape a new future. This is the response we propose for these times of crisis when faith has been exhausted and old utopias have failed. Optimism is dying out. The promised paradise has been privatized. The kibbutz apples and watermelons are no longer as ripe. We welcome new settlers whose presence shall be the embodiment of our desire for another history. We shall face many potential futures as we leave behind our safe, familiar, and one-dimensional world. We direct our appeal not only to Jews. We accept into our ranks all those for whom there is no place in their homelands, the expelled and the persecuted. There will be no discrimination in our movement. We shall not ask about your life stories, check your resident cards, or question your refugee status. We shall be strong in our weakness. With one religion, we cannot listen. With one color, we cannot see. With one culture, we cannot feel. Without you, we can't even remember. Join us, and Europe will be stunned.